It is my privilege to be here today, and I want to thank the candidates, John and Lisa, for being here as well. It's incredibly important to our society and our democracy that we have an educated workforce, educated voters, and we thank you for being here and helping us in that regard. The format of today's discussion is as follows. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for opening remarks, and then we will proceed to the questions. For questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question and 30 seconds to rebut the other candidate's response. Therefore, let's say John goes first. He has 2 minutes. Lisa will then have 2.5 minutes to answer and rebut, and then John will have 30 seconds. And we will alternate back and forth as to who's going first. We're supposed to do a coin flip. No one carries coins anymore. I don't have a coin. So pick a number between 1 and 2, or 1 or 2.
2.
2 it is. You shall go first. There we go.
Don't I get to choose who goes first?
Yeah, sure. Your choice. That's fine. You will have our first opening remark and get the first question, and then we'll proceed accordingly. Then we'll have closing remarks, 2 minutes each. We will be enforcing those time limits. Courtney here has green, yellow, and red cards. Green means you have 30 seconds left. Yellow means you have 10 seconds left. Red means please stop talking. All right. There are also ground rules for the audience today. First and foremost, please silence your cell phones, just like at the movie theaters. Also, please refrain from applauding or any audible responses to anything the candidates have to say. We want to make sure that we maximize our time today, which includes me stopping talking very soon. This session will be recorded, so please keep that in mind as well. We will be taking a few questions from the audience, so I encourage you to write down your question and pass them to Jeff Kittner, whose hand is in the air. He'll be walking up and down the aisle. Please hand him your questions. If I can't read it, it will not get asked. I promise you that. As for the questions, I would ask the candidates and the audience to remember this. This chamber has always been very policy-oriented. It rejects adjectives and labels and slogans and instead peels back that onion and goes for the analysis of the proposed solutions behind those labels. So what we would like to do today is have a discussion. What are the best policy solutions for the problems facing this district, facing this community, facing this state? So I would ask you to please be as specific as possible in your responses. With that, let's get started with our opening remarks. Lisa, the floor is yours.
Do I need this?
Yes.
Good morning. And North Dallas Chamber, thank you for hosting this. League of Women Voters, thank you. And a thank you to my husband for putting up with all of this for the last year. And Ron, thank you. And John, thank you as well. So 34 years ago, I came to Dallas to build a life for myself. Little girl from Tennessee, raised by a single mother, and wanted more. I had spent my summers in Dallas with my grandparents here at Hillcrest and Curran Drive in the district, and knew that Texas was big and life was bigger in Texas. And so I came here 34 years ago with a suitcase in hand to fulfill those dreams. I've had the privilege in Dallas to start from scratch 5 very successful businesses. I've raised 2 amazing young men. My oldest is 32, graduated from public schools, number 13 in his class, Eagle Scout, student council officer, and captain of the football team. Went on to college where he met his college sweetheart at Washington and Lee, is now the youngest managing partner nationwide for Stream Realty, and is expecting our first grandchild in February. My younger son, Casey, 30 years old, went to public schools through the 4th grade. They told him in the 4th grade, or told us as parents, that this is the best he'll ever be. He will live at home with you, and this is, we're going to do what we can, but not much more. Well, you know what, as a mom who understands a child, nobody understands a child more than a parent. We took our child to Shelton. He graduated. He went on to Abilene Christian, graduated in 5 years as an autistic child, ran track and cross country. Today he lives on his own, he has a job, and he pays his own bills, and he's taxpaying tax-paying citizen here in Dallas, Texas. My greatest assets are my children. I have been involved in the Republican Party for over 20 years. I've worked on everybody's campaign but my own. I've been chaired lots of charity events. I've been involved in the city and my community. And you know what? This is my way of giving back. I want to serve the people of HD 114 and all Texans. It is my way. I want everyone, I don't care your color, I don't care your race, I don't care your denomination. I want everyone in Texas to have the same opportunities that I've had. And so I'm honored to be here today. I'm honored to talk about the issues. I look forward to talking about the issues. And thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here with you today, and I first want to thank the sponsors of this event. Thank you to Ron Chapman, thank you to Luby Ryan for participating, and thanks to all of you all for being here early on a Friday morning to talk about issues that are important to our community. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am and why I'm running for this office. First of all, I am a husband and a father. My wife, Jenia, is here this morning. She is a professor at SMU Law School. We're the proud parents of two young sons. We have an 11-year-old and an 8-year-old. I'm a lawyer at the firm of Haynes & Boone, and I've lived in Dallas for about the last 15 years, and here in this district, House District, for about the last 12 years. And I have never run for office before, but I was motivated to do so this year for a couple of main reasons. One is my belief that the Texas legislature needs to do more to support our public schools. I had the opportunity as a lawyer to represent 88 Texas school districts in the Texas school funding litigation. And through that experience, I became convinced that our legislature is not doing its part to support public education in Texas. We have one of the lowest funding levels of any state in the country right now. We are asking our school districts like Dallas ISD and Richland ISD, the two that are in this district, to do more, but with less support from the state. We are right now relying too heavily on our school districts and therefore on our local property taxes and local property taxpayers to fund public education in Texas. I think it's critical in the next legislative session that the legislature step up and do right by our public schools, by our teachers, by our 5 million students, and ultimately by our future in Texas. Second reason I decided to run for this office is a little bit more general, and it just has to do with the general state of our politics right now and the tone of our politics. I was born in 1974, and I don't believe there's been a time in my life when I have seen more divisive rhetoric in politics and where I've had a greater concern about elements of our political leadership and their commitment to our basic American civic values. I think this is a critical election year, and that in 2018, regardless of what office someone is running for, candidates and office holders should do their part to help us recommit to our basic American civic values. And I'm talking about things like our commitment to the rule of law, to a level of decency and respect and empathy in politics, and to that great principle that we recite in our Pledge of Allegiance, liberty and justice for all. And I will tell you that as a state representative, whatever specific issue I am dealing with at the time, I will always try to have those principles in mind as I do. I look forward to a great discussion this morning, and again, thank you.
Thank you. All right, for our first question, I want to pick up on the education theme, and Lisa, by the hand gesture, you get the first response. And this is keeping in mind my comments that this chamber really delves into policy in specifics. So I'm going to start with a yes or no question. You are free to elaborate as much as you'd like, but it is a yes or no question. As you sit here today, do you believe that the level of funding for public education is adequate? In other words, setting aside where it comes from or where it goes, do you believe the level of funding is adequate?
No. I think our schools need more money, but I think the money needs to go to the classroom. It needs to go to teacher pay, and it needs to go to making our classrooms and our schools safer. I'm going to draw just real quick, just so we all, because I'm going to refer to this, but let's pretend there's a big clock on the wall behind us, okay? And let's take that 12, that big hand, and let's go all the way from the 12, past the 3, down to the 7. About 53% of our budget, $60 billion out of our $110 billion budget goes to schools, okay? You go from that 7, you go up to the 10 that is spent on healthcare. Excuse me? Oh. It is spent on healthcare. You go from 10 to 11, that's spent on public safety. So from 11 to 12, everything else, such as highways, comes from that small percentage. 94% of our budget is for 3 line items for the state to take care of. We need more money. I think we need more money by legislation. That's what our state constitution says. That's how I think we go about. We have a set rate, $10,800 approximately per student. Right now, you know, I want to go get more money. But how do we do that? I think we do it through legislation. My opponent, who agrees and just said he represented 88 school districts, he's going to go mandate more money. He sued the state and mandated that the state require you all as taxpayers, because I don't know about you, but I don't know where it's coming from here. Where is it going to come from? Where are we going to go get that extra money that my opponent wanted to mandate from you, the taxpayers? More tax dollars.
Thank you.
Well, first of all, my answer, as you probably gathered from my opening statement, is yes, we do need more funding for our public schools. Now, I do want to point out that Ms. Ryan was asked the very same question in a similar forum hosted by this same organization in the Republican primary: is our education funding adequate? And her immediate answer was absolutely, our current funding is adequate. So I'm hearing something different this morning than I heard then. I will say, I think it's a critical time for public education in Texas. Texas, as I mentioned earlier, is far down in the rankings among the 50 states in our funding for public education. But even, I think, more significantly, we're below the levels we have been in the past, even a decade ago, if you look at it properly. And I think to look at it properly, you need to look at it on a per student funding basis and on an inflation adjusted basis, and also to look at operating spending, ultimately the funding that is used to operate our schools and pay teacher salaries and pay operating costs for our school districts. That's where our school districts have not been getting the support they need from the Texas legislature. I believe a couple of things need to happen in the next legislative session. One is we need to start moving toward better state support so we are not putting all the pressure on local property taxes. A decade ago in Texas, the ratio of funding for our schools between local and state funding was about 50-50. 50-50 from our school districts and property taxes, 50% from them and 50% from the state. We've now gone to a point where it's about 62% local, 38% from the state, and it's an even more imbalanced ratio here in Dallas ISD and Richardson ISD. In the next session, we need to start moving that back toward 50-50. We need to raise the basic allotment in Texas, which is currently $51.40 per student. It's been that way for 4 years in a row. That needs to come up, and we need to allow our districts like Dallas ISD, which are doing some remarkable things and some innovative things, to have the support they need and the funding from the state legislature to do right by our kids. So yes, we need to improve our school funding, and that would be a top priority for me as a legislator.
30 seconds.
So he says that the state is paying less. What he's not telling you is that as our appraisals go up, and over the last 10 years our appraisals have gone up, the local entities have not decreased the tax rate. So from a house that was $250,000 10 years ago, today you're paying 83% more in school taxes. And as those school taxes go up locally and more to that $10,800, the state pays in less. The schools are getting the same amount of money, it's just coming from different places. Now it comes more from the local, less from the state. That needs to adjust and change. I agree.
Thank you. Let's pull on that thread a little bit. I hear both of you say current funding is inadequate. So we have agreement on that. That's good. What I didn't hear is where's the money going to come from? So that's my follow-up question to each of you. Where specifically is the money going to come from?
Well, thank you. To answer that question, I first want to make the point that in the past, when the state has increased funding for education, it's come from multiple different sources, not just one single source. In the 1980s, we passed important school legislation, House Bill 72, maybe some of y'all can remember back that far, where we pulled new funding from various sources in state government. This time, I think we need to do something similar, but I'll tell you where I would start looking. First of all, right now we have a rainy day fund which has close to $11 billion in it. It will probably have more than $11 billion by the time we get our next report on it and by the time the next legislative session starts. That fund is an important savings account, if you will, for the state, but there's no reason it should have that much in it. Historically, if you look back at the rainy day fund, up to the year 2006, it never ended a fiscal year with more than $1 billion remaining in it. But it has somehow become fashionable to have a much, much larger balance remaining in that fund. That's unused tax dollars that have been collected already but aren't being put to any public service. I think we should start by looking at the rainy day fund. There were many in the legislature in both parties that wanted to do so, wanted to pull more money from that fund for public education purposes in the last session. I would be one of them. I think that is a critical place to start. I believe there are other places we can look too. The U.S. Supreme Court has recently opened the way through the Wayfair case to allow for collection of sales taxes from out-of-state entities involved in e-commerce. We already collect from Amazon and some of the big companies, but there are probably several $100 million more that we could collect from other out-of-state entities that haven't paid sales taxes in Texas, which frankly would even the playing field between them and our brick and mortar businesses here in Texas. Those are some places I would look. I believe the money can be found. Even in the last legislative session, the Texas House passed another $1.6 billion in aid for education, but the Senate put vouchers on it and therefore killed it. We can start there and improve our funding.
Well, we have a completely different opinion because, you know what, I don't know about you all, but in our household, we have a savings account for emergencies. That is our nest egg that we count on if we need it. And the rainy day fund is set there for emergencies. It's there for Harvey. We're going to have to go into the rainy day fund. Money has been spent from the budget that's going to have to be repaid by the rainy day fund. So we are using it for Harvey. We live in crazy times. We might need it in case there's a natural disaster. That money is set aside to take care of taxpayers. And it should stay there. That's what makes Texas, Texas. I agree that, or disagree in the fact that we need to, the way we're going to spend the money and where we're going to get it. I agree with Mr. Turner. There are other options. I've been working with Drew Springer, Representative Drew Springer, on the Appropriations Committee. And there are other ways. We tax ice, but we don't tax water, bottles of water. There are other places we can get it. The e-commerce is a place that we can get money. Actually, the legislature is looking at paying down and not having any M&O, maintenance and operation, property taxes. There are ways that we can reduce the property taxes for our schools. I've knocked on 6,000 doors over the course of this last year, and everyone from young to old is begging for tax relief. We cannot, the question goes back to where do we get the money? I think we should be, instead of keep taking, why can't we step back and say, what do we need? What do we need to educate our children and in the classrooms and to pay our teachers more and to keep our schools safe? Why keep taking? Let's see what we have, let's see what we need, and go from there. But you tell me on my pie right here on our clock where we're going to get more money. Are we going to take it from the transportation up in that 11 to 12? Are we going to take it from healthcare? Are we going to take it from public safety? No, we can't. If we can't take it from there, we're going to have to come to you and take it. And I'm for less taxes.
We need a reasonable balance in the rainy day fund. We don't need $11 billion. To talk about keeping all that money in the rainy day fund and not spending any on public education, spending more on public education, is kind of like, I think, a family who is bragging about how big their savings account is, and then you ask them if they've bought school supplies for their kids yet this year, and they say, oh, no, we can't afford it. That doesn't make any sense. And by the way, I didn't think that one up on my own. That was in an article by our Republican Speaker of the House, Joe Strauss.
All right, let's switch to transportation. And Lisa, the question goes to you first. It's a similar question. Do you believe the level of funding is adequate as we sit here today for transportation? And if not, what are we going to do about it, and where's the money going to come from?
I don't think that the budget is adequate enough for transportation. I do think we need more. In the primary, 635 East was a big issue. That money is there, it's starting. It should have started long ago, but it's coming. We need, I've again talked to and worked with a lot of the state legislators, and we've not raised the gas tax since early 1990s. We need to look at that. We need to look at the vehicle registration stickers. How we take those dollars need to be going directly to transportation and not being redirected. So we have, as we're growing abundantly in Texas, tens of thousands are coming to Texas every year. We need to provide for the roads. We've got to have, that's a core government value function, is transportation infrastructure. Where the money is going to come from? Are we going to take it from education? Are we going to take it from health care? Or are we going to take it from public safety? Or are we going to come to you for more money? We cannot come to you. You're paying enough. Let's go find out what we need and then be responsible with your money. One thing about this election is some of my biggest supporters are my clients who I've worked with for many, many years, 3, 4, 5, 6 projects for, and I'm a good steward of their money. As a legislator and a representative for you, I'm going to be a good steward of your money. I know how hard I've worked for my money, and as a business owner, I know how hard you work for your money, and I'm going to be a good steward of it. I'm not just going to go spend, spend, spend.
Well, the answer to the question is yes, we do need funding for our important transportation projects, especially our freeway projects here in the Dallas area. And the most important freeway project that has now finally been green-lighted in this district area, I believe, is the expansion of the LBJ East Freeway. The north part of LBJ has already been expanded, as you all see, probably drive it often. However, that east side has not yet. And frankly, it was held up for a very long time by some state officials who had an absolute opposition to use of any managed lanes on that project. And Ms. Ryan was in fact endorsed by the organization TURF, which is opposed not only to toll roads but even to use of managed lanes on projects like that. Ultimately, there was fortunately a grassroots movement on the east side of this district and in the Lake Highlands neighborhood to support expansion of that project with limited use of managed lanes, and finally overcame that opposition, and I think it's a good thing that we did. Now, I'll say this about funding through managed lanes and tolls. I don't believe tolls should be the centerpiece of our future transportation infrastructure in Dallas or in Texas. However, we have to have the money come from somewhere to make these projects work, and if we're not in a position where we have full funding without use of managed lanes or partnerships with private entities that will help us get there, then I think we need to be pragmatic and open to partnerships of that nature on a limited basis, always using full transparency and accountability in any such project. But ultimately, we need to do what we need to do in order to move forward and make sure we continue to have an infrastructure that supports our growing population in Dallas.
Well, I'm running to represent HD 114, and I did talk to a lot of the people in East Dallas because LBJ East did affect them. And they wanted relief. They wanted any relief they could get, and they wanted tolls. They wanted managed lanes. And so I went and talked to them and visited, and I'm going to represent our district. That project is underway. I don't believe in tolls staying forever. They need to come, pay for the road, and go away. It is an additional tax on the taxpayers of North Texas.
So you both mentioned managed lanes, you both mentioned tolls. John, you mentioned partnerships. Here's a question from my 14-year-old daughter. If we can build a high-speed train from London to Paris, two countries that don't speak the same language, under the English Channel, why can we not have one from Dallas to Houston?
Do I go first, or
Yeah,
does
it's
John
your
goes
turn.
first?
Is it my turn?
Yep.
Okay. Well, you know, it's funny you say that, because when I was about that age, I think I was about 14, 15 years old, that's the first time I left this country, and I went to Japan. And I remember at that time, and I spent several weeks over there in a program for high school kids in Japan, and I rode on the bullet train there. They call it the Shinkansen. And I remember thinking that same thing. Why can't we have this in Texas and in the United States? Frankly, I still feel that way today. I am a supporter of the privately funded high-speed rail project that's being discussed that would go from Dallas to Houston to Austin and Austin, San Antonio area and back. And I think there's no reason why we shouldn't be in Texas a leader in the next generation of rail transportation. I'm a supporter of that project. Again, it's not a taxpayer-funded project, but I think that's an area where we could show leadership in this state and leadership in this country.
My husband has commuted from Dallas to Houston our entire relationship, 27 years. I think that's right, honey. Anyway, he's commuted Southwest Airlines, or sometimes he's taken the megabus. I think a high-speed rail is a great idea. I agree with it being privately funded, but I'm also going to take into account these landowners who live between here and Houston. They need to be protected. The fact of eminent domain is a concern. It's a big concern. I've listened to them. As a state representative, I'm going to listen to all concerns. And if it's good for all Texans, I'm in. If it's only good for a few, we need to talk about it. But the high-speed rail, my concern is the eminent domain. This is these families' livelihood. It is their means of income. And so that's my concern about the high-speed rail. Do I think it's great for Texas? Absolutely. But there's got to be an agreement. There's got to be something that it's a win-win for everybody.
And I recognize that it's important to be judicious and, of course, lawful and provide just compensation to those that are affected by this project if eminent domain is to be used, and that's the way that we always should try to operate in government generally with projects like this. But I do think overall the benefits of this project seem very promising for our state, for our future, for all Texans, and that's the reason I support it. And I think we just need to make sure that as we proceed, we do so in a lawful way that is respectful of just compensation and property rights.
All right. I have one more question, then we'll turn to the audience's questions. Lisa, we'll start with you. Both of you have received a number of endorsements in this race, of which you should be justifiably very proud. I'm interested in knowing which endorsement, or maybe two endorsements, you are most proud of and why.
I think the first endorsement that I'm most proud of is the NFIB, the National Federation of Independent Businesses. They are the voice of small business owners nationally. And they've watched me. They've seen the success of my business. You know, I have to make tough decisions as a business owner. I have signed the front and back of a paycheck, have for over 30 years. I hire and unfortunately fire people. The NFIB recognizes that and the importance of small business owners in the economic engine of America. So I'm very proud of that. The other endorsement that I'm proud of is Texas Right to Life. I am pro-life. I think life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is the core values of our nation. That's what our nation was founded on. They've watched me. I have an amazing story of life. And it is not an issue I'm running on, but it is an issue that I'm proud of because I will always defend life. But those are two endorsements that I've received and am very proud of.
Well, I'm going to assume it goes without saying that the endorsements that matter to me most are simply those of District 114 and the voters in this district and people from all walks of life who are supporting our campaign. But I will say, in terms of specific endorsements I've noted, I was very proud to get the support of all 4 of the Dallas ISD trustees whose districts overlap with this district I'm running in, and that's Miguel Solis, Dan Mitchkay, Edwin Flores, and Dustin Marshall. And I'm particularly proud of that because, as you heard in my opening remarks, public education is a central issue for me in this campaign. And I'm proud of the fact that in that group of 4, there are Republicans, Democrats, Independents. And that, to me, helps demonstrate the bipartisan nature of the education issue and the bipartisan level of support we have in the campaign. I'm also very proud to have the support of the police and fire, the Dallas Police Association and the Dallas Firefighters Association. Our first responders do so much to protect us and put so much on the line for us, and it means a lot to me to have their support. I'm proud of the breadth of support we have in this campaign, whether it's the Texas Association of Business or the Texas Medical Association, many other organizations that have stepped up, not partisan organizations, but just organizations that want to do right by those they represent and by our state. And so I am proud to have that level of broad and bipartisan support.
So I think it's interesting that the 2 associations that he's most proud of, first being the school board trustees, you have to remember that he represented 88 of those schools, suing the schools and mandating that he has more money. So of course they'll support him. And the second, Dallas Fire and Police, he is also their attorney in their pension plan. So of course they should support him. The voters of Texas House District 114 have overwhelmingly, you saw it in the primary, supported me as a small business owner, a mom, and someone who understands the issues in Texas. And I'm very, very proud of that.
Okay, first question from the audience, and we'll start with John. 1 out of 6 Texans and 1 out of 5 Dallas residents lack health insurance. This is harmful to the person lacking insurance, but financially devastating to many doctors and hospitals. What will you do to improve this?
Well, you know, Texas, it's a great question. Texas has, of the 50 states, the highest percentage of uninsured in our population, of any of the 50 states. And here in Dallas, by studies I've seen, we may have the highest percentage of uninsured of any major city in America. Now, I don't know of anyone who would say that is a good position to be in. What can we do about it? Well, there's one very straightforward and simple thing we could be doing about it, and that is we could be, as a state, accepting the tens of billions of dollars of federal tax money, and really I should say our tax money, that could be used to expand coverage in Texas under the Affordable Care Act and reduce that percentage of uninsured. You know, when we have a high uninsured population like that, we end up paying anyway. We pay for that uninsured population through our public hospitals like Parkland and the property taxes we pay. We pay through higher premiums that we all pay when we have large amounts of uncompensated care in our hospitals. So ultimately, we just need to do what's smart. And the Texas Association of Business, for instance, has supported the acceptance of those tens of billions of dollars of ACA funds. Frankly, it's our tax money. We should be getting something from it instead of just subsidizing health insurance in other states. I want to do what's smart for Texas, what makes economic sense, and then ultimately, of course, what is also going to make Texas healthier. And I do believe that the vast majority of people in this field that I talk to, including our hospitals, especially believe that accepting these funds would be something that would make us healthier and would be an economically smart thing to do in Texas.
And I completely disagree. The funding from the federal government, what they've offered is to pay $8 for every dollar that we as Texas puts in. But you know what? They've agreed to do that for 3 to 5 years. After 3 to 5 years, that $8 goes away, and guess who picks up the difference? You, the taxpayer. We as Texans want to solve that problem on our own. We will take care of, we will make sure that everyone has health insurance, but we are not going to put our trust in the federal government that's $21 trillion in debt. That is a lot of money, and it's a lot to ask of you. We have lots of options. I've talked to I talk every day at the door. Women's health is a big issue. Where are they going to go and get mammograms and everything that women need, or PAPs and things like that? We are going to go, I this morning Googled, I've talked to Linda Coop and a lot of other female state representatives. We're going to work hard on female health and make sure that they have it. But you can Google. We have a program in Texas. You don't hear much about it. It's called Texas Women's Health. They can go. They take CHIP. They take Medicare, Medicaid. I put in my zip code right here, 75230. Do you know how many clinics came up for Medicaid? 832 in a 20-mile radius. There is health care available for all. And for us to go take federal dollars and it only be guaranteed for 3 to 5 years, you know what that does? It expands government control. It makes us beholden to a federal government that's trillions and trillions of dollars worth of debt. We can take care of this here locally. We do not need federal help in expanding Medicaid. My opponent wants single-payer health care. I don't. We were at a meet and greet the other night. There's a gentleman who's a friend of my older son. He's 37 years old. He told us he has 3 young children. Do you know what he pays in insurance? In insurance alone, this 37-year-old young couple pays $36,000 a year. And let me tell you something. When doctors stop getting paid, if we go to single payer and doctors stop getting paid for their service, they're going to stop being doctors.
Well, first of all, I do not support single-payer health care. That was just simply incorrect. I do support a multi-payer mix in our healthcare system. The Texas Medical Association just recently endorsed my campaign. I'm very proud to have that support. What I believe in doing is being smart about this. And the simple question is it better to have public funds used for health care in emergency rooms for uninsured patients, or is it better to have a larger percentage of people insured and therefore receiving their health care in primary care settings and preventive care settings? That's why I support the acceptance of those funds, which I think is economically smart and a good deal for Texas.
So the next question from the audience deals with the issue of water needs for the state of Texas. And this is a subject that this Chamber of Commerce has been involved with in the past. And it's not a sexy issue, but it is critically important. So how would you address water needs in the state?
Well, it's an issue for as long as I've been involved in politics and in the community. We need better water. We need more water. We need to invest money in it. The question comes back to, and you saw we've not spent a lot of money in it. It comes out of that 5% up there, the 11 to 12. We need to go get money for water, but that's a core function of government that we have failed, that we're not doing a good job on, and that where we need to spend our dollars. We don't need to be spending dollars expanding projects and services that we don't need in Texas. So we need better water. We need to assure that. Again, it's core function of government, and I will make sure that we all have water. My husband and I just supported water wells. We just funded water wells in Cambodia. We know the importance. It changed their life to see these people have water for the first time. We take it for granted to have clean water. It's a must, it's core function. I will make sure that we continue to have it.
Well, clearly water is a critical issue for our state as we look ahead into our future with the projected population growth and projected effects, including climate change effects in the future. You know, I think our state does do a number of things pretty well. And I have to say, in the area of water, I think we've done a pretty good job so far as a state. We have something called the State Water Plan, which is essentially a process that involves a lot of regional water planning boards and entities from all over the state, divided into regions. And they assess the water needs very thoroughly in the communities and for all of the businesses and citizens living in their area. and present a water plan for their area that goes to the it goes into the state water plan. And a couple of years ago, under the leadership of Speaker Strauss in the legislature, several $billion, I think it was $2 billion, was used from the rainy day fund to support water planning projects that are needed under the state water plan. I think the process is working well. One of the things they are emphasizing is water conservation. That's going to be a key to making sure we do have enough water in the future for our growing population. And I support the way that process is working. We can always try to improve, and I'd be committed to looking at ways to do that, but I think we're doing pretty well there. One thing I'll say about water, I do think we should do more to test for lead in the water of our public schools. Legislation was proposed in the last session that would have expanded testing for lead in our public school water. We have a lot of aging infrastructure in many of our school districts. Fort Worth found some lead levels in their water, but there is no current statewide testing for lead in the water that our kids drink in public schools, and I think we should make some progress in the legislature in having that testing.
I agree. I mean, water is, again, a core function of government.
So there's general agreement that certain aspects need to be funded, whether that's education, transportation, water, and I sense and hear agreement on those issues. What I don't hear a consensus on, not surprisingly, is where that money comes from. So let's delve back into the specifics of that a little bit. And here's a question that raises a specific proposal. Do you agree with John Corona's suggestion several years ago to allow local entities to raise the gas tax?
To allow local entities to raise the gas tax. I'm not familiar with that proposal, to be honest with you. At this point, no, I would not say that the gas tax should be an area that local entities should be involved in. I think the gas tax is ultimately a state issue and a federal issue. Of course, we all need to be able to support our local entities in the areas of their traditional jurisdiction. By the way, I'm a big supporter of local control. I think something we've seen in the legislature recently is, frankly, an unusual level of fighting between our state government and our local governmental entities in our cities, including the city of Dallas. Frankly, the legislature needs to be more of a partner and less of an adversary for our cities like Dallas and respect their traditional areas of local concern. But having not been familiar with the proposal, I can't say I would support what was presented and having local governments raise the gas tax.
I don't think the local government should have authority to raise the local gas tax either. I think that's something I talked about earlier. The gas tax hasn't been raised since the early 1990s, and we need to look at that. I think that I'm very proud, and I should go back, one of the best endorsements that I've had that I'm very proud of is Governor Greg Abbott has endorsed me. And Governor Abbott wants our local spending, and I have to say, mayors and school boards and superintendents and city councilmen, they have a tough job. They have a lot of needs in the city, but they cannot continue just to raise taxes, and as the evaluations are going up, they're getting more money anyway. We cannot just keep, and I say this over and over, keep taking. The problem is every year we just go, we don't look at what the needs are. They change every year, and we've got to see what we need. Otherwise, they're going to tax all of us out of our homes. They already are. So I agree with Greg Abbott. He wants to put a 2.5% cap on our local entities, that they can only raise up to 2.5%, otherwise it goes to a vote to the people. I agree with that. We've got to have a cap on it. And so, but as far as the gas tax locally, no, I do not support that. I think that would be a state legislative issue, not a local issue.
And I guess we did drift slightly from the question. I'll continue the drift just a little bit. One of the items in the special session that Governor Abbott called that he was pushing was a total freeze on the level of local government spending, city and county spending, for every local government in Texas to be frozen at current levels other than to adjust for population or inflation change unless you had a special election of the voters to approve it. That's the kind of thing that I think violates our traditional principles of local control. We elect local officials to make those decisions about our budget priorities, and I think that they'll be sensitive to the will of the voters on this and find the right balance.
The next question has to do with vaccinations and whether they should be mandatory or required. Are you supportive of mandatory vaccinations, and if so or if not, why?
I agree with and support the policy that DISD and public schools have, that to go to a public school, you need to be vaccinated. I also believe that nobody knows better than a parent or wants the best care for their child than a parent does. And I think that parents need to make those decisions with their trusted physician. There's very few parents that I know that haven't vaccinated their child. I'm vaccinated, my children are vaccinated, my grandchild, I've already talked to my daughter-in-law, will be vaccinated. But I want it to be where you vaccinate your child because you choose to, based on your relationship with your doctor. Not that a state mandates that you must be vaccinated. You know what? We stagger vaccinations on our pets. There's a lot of moms that I talk to and say, you know what? My kids are vaccinated, but I made 3 trips to the doctor because I wanted them to be vaccinated 3 different times, not at all at one time. So I support vaccinations, but I want it to be because the parents chose to, because they trusted their doctor and they made the best decision for their child. And I support the public school policy on vaccinations.
One significant difference between myself and Ms. Ryan in this race is that in the Republican primary, Ms. Ryan was heavily supported by what's sometimes called the vaccine choice, or often called just the anti-vaccination lobby in Texas. I am one who would take my cues from our public health community and our medical community on the critical issue of vaccinations. We have to balance this liberty interest that exists when parents may choose not to vaccinate children with the liberty interest that we all share and that all of our children share in not being in a situation where they could be at risk of a dangerous disease resulting from a low vaccination rate in their school. We do have an increasing problem with non-vaccination and higher non-vaccination rates in many areas of our state, and it's becoming a public health concern. The Texas Medical Association in particular has been butting heads with the anti-vaccine lobby on these issues. I think we need to look at science. We need to listen to science. We need to listen to doctors, listen to the public health community to make sure we get our vaccine policy right, and that we be willing to consider measures that will curtail the increasing problem of high non-vaccination in our schools. By the way, one thing that I would support, right now under state law, you don't have to report your vaccination levels at an individual school campus level. So my son, who's in the DISD school this morning, I don't know what the vaccination rates are at his particular school. They are reported by the entire school district level, but that doesn't tell you too much in a district as large as DISD. We need to be committed to public health, committed to science, and support vaccinations.
I am committed to public health and I believe in science. These women came to me in the primary. I, as your state representative, will always listen. I have listened. 60,000 households have my personal cell number. The only number I've ever had since I moved to Dallas. My husband and my boys call me on that number. These women reached out to me and said, "Will you hear us?" I sat down and I listened to them. They've never asked me to sign anything. They've never asked me to legislate on their behalf. They just wanted to listen. I will listen to everybody.
Last question before we move to closing remarks. Recently, our legislature has spent a lot of focus on the so-called bathroom bill. If there is an effort to resurrect that in the future, will you support it or not, and why?
And I appreciate the question. And I oppose the bathroom bill. And this is another important difference in this race, because Ms. Ryan has defended the bathroom bill. You know, if the bathroom bill had passed in the last legislative session, and it would have passed if not for the opposition of the business community, the Texas Association of Business, a lot of the large and small businesses all across North Texas, and the leadership of Speaker Strauss, Texas would have become, at that time, the only state in the country to have such a law. It would have been bad for our economy. It would have been bad for business relocations. And frankly, it also would have been bad and harmful toward vulnerable kids. And that's the most important reason, by the way, in my view, to have opposed it. I will stand firmly in opposing any effort to revive the bathroom bill in the next legislative session. I do think Representative Villalba, who of course still occupies the seat for which Ms. Ryan and I are now running, should be commended for his opposition to the bathroom bill in the special session.
First of all, I never said I supported the bathroom bill. What I strongly believe in is that companies need to have be able to set their own standards on what their bathrooms are. Do you want a bathroom? You can have a bathroom. I want less government, not more. You can have a bathroom like Hobby Lobby, Starbucks, or Target. But you as a business owner may decide. Most of you all here are business owners, and you want those decisions. You don't want those regulations put on you. As an individual, I go back to core function of government. One of the core functions of government is security. As an individual who was sexually assaulted most of her life, I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. And I am always going to steer to the protection of individuals. It has not been a huge issue, but it has the potential to be a huge issue. I come from it because I think that we need to protect. If you as a business owner want to share a bathroom or want anybody or you want separate stalls, I'm great with that. But I want you to decide. I want less government. And I don't think, I've talked to Dan Patrick, I've talked to the governor, that is not on the agenda. It's not going to come back up. It's resolved. And I think we let the media drive that conversation and people didn't understand what that bathroom bill was. But I never personally came out and supported it.
Well, and I want to say that I appreciate and acknowledge Ms. Ryan's comments about her own personal story, and appreciate that she is willing to share what she has experienced and endured. And I just want to say about the bathroom bill, I oppose it because, again, I think it would hurt vulnerable kids and stigmatize them with the imprimatur of the state. I don't think that's the right direction for us to go. I hope it isn't resurrected in the next session, but I do see lots of signs that many people still say that it should be, or at least talking to supporters like maybe they would consider doing so. It's the wrong direction for Texas. I think it's good that our business community has stood up against it, and I hope that continues.
So we will now move to closing remarks, 2 minutes each, and we started with you, Lisa, on opening remarks, so let's start with John on closing remarks.
Well, thank you everyone again for the opportunity to talk with you about the issues this morning. It's been a very good discussion. You know, this is a critical election. It's a very important election. It's a very important election in state politics, and it's what's going to happen in the next legislature. We're going to have a choice between going down a path of continuing to underfund our schools and potentially going down the path of private school vouchers, which is another issue we didn't get to, but is something that Ms. Ryan supports. Or we're going to have a choice to redouble our support for our public schools and stop the movement toward privatization and private school vouchers. We're going to have a choice between a legislature that continues to fight with our major cities, including Dallas, or decides to be an adversary, decides to be an ally, not an adversary, and supports our cities and supports their ability to support us in public safety and our first responders and our streets and parks and libraries. We're going to have a choice on whether we are going to focus in the legislature on the divisive wedge issues, such as the bathroom bill, or whether we're going to step up and try to meet our challenges, our big challenges as a state, like public education and health and infrastructure. I will tell you that if I'm elected as your state representative, I will keep the focus on the real challenges, on education, on quality medical care, on clean air and water, and on a good business climate and economic growth for our state. Those are the things that really matter in state government. We need to move away from the divisive issues and find a way to work together again and improve the tone of our politics. I'll just say one more thing, and that is, as your representative, I will be a listener. I will be a worker. I will always want to hear both sides, and I will do my best to represent this entire district. Not any ideological faction, not my political party. Above all, I will be a representative for this district and for Texas. Thank you again for the opportunity to visit with you this morning.
Thank you, Chamber. Thank you, League of Women Voters. John, thanks for the conversation. And Ron, thank you so much. As your state legislator, I'm going to go down and fight on your behalf. I've had to fight every day. As a business owner, I know how to make tough decisions. I'm going to make tough decisions on your behalf. I'm not always going to make decisions that you like or not, but I'm going to go down and represent my district. And if my district wants something, I'm going to go down and I'm going to fight for it. I'm going to go down and lead. I'm not going to go spend, spend, spend. See, the party that my opponent represents, they make promises to everything and everybody, and they come back and they tax you. I've knocked on 6,000 doors. My team has knocked on 15,000 doors. I hear you. I hear you loud and clear. We're going to roll government back to do what it was created to do so you can do what you were created to do. I solve problems every day. I bring people together every day. I'm going to go down and I'm going to fight for you through legislation. My opponent has fought his whole life and gotten results through litigation. I don't think that's what Texans want. I don't think it's what they need. So as your state representative, I'm going to listen to you. You have my phone number. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to be transparent with you. And we're going to agree to disagree sometimes. But you will know where I stand. And I'm not coming to I want to take the government's hand out of your pockets. My opponent wants to put both their hands in both your pockets. I'm not going to do that. I've heard you, and we're going to go to Texas and keep Texas, and the Texas that government's core function, another core function, is to work with citizens, work with Americans, work with Texans so they're successful. And with more burdens and regulations, we cannot be successful. I want a government that will work for us, not against us. So I look forward to serving you. I ask for your support. I ask for your vote. And if you want my mobile phone number, you don't have it, I'm happy to give it to you.
I want to thank the North Dallas Chamber and the League of Women Voters for hosting this event. I also want to point out that it takes an incredible amount of time, energy, and frankly, courage to run as a candidate. So join me in commending and thanking these candidates too.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron. Appreciate it. Thank you.